Oh, hi. Hello everyone. I'm polishing my my Arabian pot. Look at that. It hasn't been polished for a long time. It's probably, well, I think it's got brass gilding. It's maybe steel with a brass gilding on it, perhaps. I got it in Zanzibar, which is the topic of today's episode. So just bear with me and I'll get it nice and shiny for you. Some of you may be expecting a genie to pop out. I don't think I'm going to have that much luck. It comes with a tray. It's filthy. And there's also little copper cups. And I don't know where they are. I think they're in the spare room. I didn't lose them, but yeah, I've had this all the time from 1986 in Zanzibar. So if you watched last episode, we got back to Nairobi. I'd walked a lot of kilometres through jungle and forest to get to see those gorillas in Zaire. I'd stayed with the taxi drivers, Cylinder Head, Livingston on the border. I'd stayed with them for a few days. That was a lot of fun. Long train trips, sleeping on the mat on the ground, surviving on pineapples and bananas. And I got back to Nairobi, and I think I saw Ula again, the Danish doctor, and I certainly saw Whiskey, the girl at the camera shop. She gave me some photos that a tourist had left of a rhinoceros. We'll go through the book shortly, but I think I'll talk first while I'm polishing, and it's starting to come up quite nice. I took a train from Nairobi to Mombasa on the coastline. I remember it was very hot and humid on the coast, and there was a real Arab feel about the east coast of Africa. There were like those feluccas, they call them, the Arab boats. There were lots more Muslims with their long white robes on. The Africans were a lot darker, a lot blacker than inland. And I decided to go to Zanzibar. And I also went to Tanzania. I can't remember the sequence of events, whether I went to Tanzania then Zanzibar, but for the sake of the story we're going to say I went to Zanzibar first. Now you could get like a ferry. I think a couple of times a week this ferry went. There's another sister island to Zanzibar, I don't remember the name, but yeah, waiting around wasn't really the sort of thing I was very good at. I was restless, irritable and discontented in those days, and we're going to talk about that a bit, the observations I've made of myself with 40 years hindsight. If you can live an extra 40 years from, I was 26 when I did that trip, if you can tack on another 40 years, you're going to have some life experience and some life wisdom. You're going to be able to survive stuff which at the time seemed very challenging for me. So yeah, I wasn't going to get the ferry, so I flew across to Zanzibar. I don't know exactly why, it just sounded exotic, and it was. Yeah, it sounded exotic, and what I'd read about it, just somewhere that I wanted to see. So I flew from, I think, Mombasa across to Zanzibar. It was, you know, a pretty short hop across the Indian Ocean. And yeah, it was everything I expected. There were long winding roads, or alleyways I should say, with you know, Arabian studded doors with you know, the mosaics and the turrets, some fantastic sort of ruins in the jungle of Arabian palaces, you know, the visions of harems and sultans and all that sort of stuff, all that good stuff was there in spades in Zanzibar. I remember I slept under a mosquito net, and yeah, it was one of the best places I went to. It was fantastic atmosphere at night, whereas the sun was going down and setting. Once again, fantastic for photography. The sun would set off in the distance, and all along the foreshore would be these little cafes, and food stalls would open up with spicy things and seafood and fish and you know, hints of Indian food, African food. The British embassy or the British colonial office was in the background, you know, white with the columns and the pillars behind it, sort of two-story balcony, and you know, couples would be walking holding hands as the sun started to go down, and you know, the heat of the day started to fade. That was really memorable, and food was fantastic, so I enjoyed that. I remember one night going out and these African boys calling out to me. I suppose I was looking for a bit of action, and they called me over. We sat on the rocks and we smoked these joints, and they had the dreadlocks, and we were listening to Bob Marley, and you know, we were probably about the same age, smoking joints, sitting in Zanzibar with the water lapping at our feet. It was just gorgeous with a big moon above us. So it was in one of those bazaars that I bought this pot. There were lots of good stuff available. I mean, it's obviously made for tourists. I had to put it in a box with other stuff and once again mail things back home because yeah, my backpack was always getting heavier. And you know, I kept you know, whittling away at my the money that I was travelling with. I don't know what you'd use this pot for. I suppose, well, really you couldn't use it for anything. It's starting to look good now. I suppose you could put wine in it. You know, there's that little minaret sort of top. It's come off. It was soldered. So it's got a little, yeah, it's starting to look good. I don't know how long I was there. Yeah, I hired out a bicycle when I was on Zanzibar. You could cycle down to where they used to keep the slaves. There were caves, and you could see manacles sort of cut into the rocks, or like iron holding rings in the rocks where they chained their slaves to. Zanzibar was a big slaving port, and David Livingstone had been there. There was a church for David Livingstone where he had been, and he'd seen the slave trade, and you know, it was his mission to try and end it now. I don't know why, but I had been to David Livingstone's birthplace in a place called Blantyre in Scotland. The pronunciation may not be right, Blantyre. But I'd been to where he was born, so I wanted to follow it up. So yeah, I think that might have been part of the reason I went to Zanzibar, to see where this church for David Livingstone was. There was some sort of, I think it was an altar or something made from where the slaves had been sold or had been whipped or something. So on that occasion here, I rode a bicycle down to see these caves where they used to hold the slaves. I don't remember too much else about what I did there. We'll read the diary and we might find out a bit more. And I don't know how even long I was there, probably 3 or 4 days at the most, I suppose. Alright, we've got our book out again. We're going to look at Zanzibar. I tended to get local stamps when I was there. Gives us, I don't know who did the writing. I couldn't possibly have done such nice handwriting. Well, that's that British colonial office I mentioned, the pillars and the multi-level. That was on the waterfront. There's some of those Arabian palaces overgrown in the jungle. The minarets, and that's you know, some of the roots of the trees reclaiming these buildings. Pretty sure that's that David Livingstone church which was built on the slave market. A mosque. And that's that waterfront. You know, beautiful for photography, isn't it? That's one of those Arabic felucca, I think they call them. But yeah, all the food stalls were along here, and people would gather to watch the sun go down into the ocean. And all along was the smell of the seafood and the curries and the satay and you know, food being cooked on the foreshore. So yeah, that was superb. That was Zanzibar. So I went back to Mombasa, and then I went down to Tanzania, and I went to Dar es Salaam. I was interested in Tanzania because of its colonial history again. I was a bit of a colonial history buff, and Tanzania used to be a German colony, so I was keen to see if there was any evidence of that, remembering I'd worked in Southwest Africa, which had been a German colony. So I felt that sort of affinity. You know, once again, I'm walking, or I'm catching buses, or I'm hitchhiking. Some of you might wonder about hitchhiking in Africa. Actually, and it still is, because I saw it there when I was in South Africa last year. There are always African people standing by the side of the road doing this, and it's an accepted form of transport. So if you've got a bit of spare room in the back of your truck, or in your van, or your car, you can pick up these people that are standing by the side of the road, and then you can ask them for a bit of a fare to, you know, to make a bit of money for yourself and to lower your costs of transport. So yeah, hitchhiking was quite unacceptable, but it did restrict me. I couldn't go exactly where I wanted to do. I think I've just remembered something. I think it was on the way to Tanzania, but I hiked, or I walked, or I got a bicycle or something, but I went to these underground caves. They were fantastic. Like, it was a huge cave network. I'm thinking it was towards Tanzania. There was also a chimpanzee sanctuary that I would have liked to have got to, but once again it was a bit hard to get to. But these caves, you know, I think I'm pretty sure I had the bicycle. I don't know where the bicycle came from. But these guys were showing me around in these labyrinth of caves. They were huge, and they said you could even go on these tours where you'd spend a couple of nights underground in these caves. These guys knew them back to front. I think I just went in for an hour or two and had a look around. You know, there was lighting, and they had names for these various caves. It was fantastic. But I was restricted with what I could see, what I could do, and how far I could go because of lack of transport. But I did get to Dar es Salaam, and only the other day I bought out something, and I'll show it to you guys, that I bought in Dar es Salaam. There was a local artist selling his paintings, and I got this painting purely for its childlike representation of a scene from an African river with a crocodile, elephant, hippos. It just caught my eyes. It was bright, it was colourful, and quite childlike in its artistry. So it had been under the bed for years, so I just got it out and put it up on the wall in the bathroom, and I'll show you guys what it looks like. So I don't have very many memories of Dar es Salaam really. I probably spent a day or so there, looked around a little bit, and you know, part of the going there as well was the idea to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. I heard myself on tape or video on the other episode saying I didn't think I was fit enough to do Kilimanjaro. Actually, after reading their diary, yeah, I would have been fit enough. It was the cost. It was $150 to climb Kilimanjaro, so I was always penny pinching. But the funny thing is, when I got back to Nairobi, I remember taking whiskey out for dinner one night, and before meeting her for our date, we went for an Italian meal. Some guy approached me and said, do you want to buy some coke? As in cocaine. And I had no qualms in handing over cash to buy drugs, and I'm sure he sold me talcum powder, because I'd never had coke before. I don't think I've ever had coke since. So that means I've never had coke. But yeah, I didn't get anything out of this stuff, whatever it was. But yeah, I was okay with spending money on alcohol and drugs, but quite stingy when it came to other things. So those are some memories off the top of my head, and I'm still polishing. It's starting to look pretty good. But it's going to need a lot of work. So that's your tray. Mem Sahib. Mem Sahib. Your wine is ready, Mem Sahib. Something I wanted to mention. Another place I should have gone to was, I've always been interested in Lord Errol. So there was a movie called White Mischief about, they called them the Happy Valley set. These were British people that lived in the valley around about where Karen Blixen lived. Karen Blixen was the main character, or the authoress, that wrote out of Africa. She was from Denmark, she was Danish. But in that set were all these colonials living this life of luxury and opulence, wife swapping, drug taking, orgies. It all went on, and they all congregated at a place called the Mathaiga Club. Now the Mathaiga Club is still there, and it was certainly there when I was in Nairobi. I could have gone there and seen, they used to slip little notices to each other in their lockers. So the story of Lord Errol was, there was a woman called Diane, I don't remember her surname, but she married an older man, and of course he was loaded. And they arrived in Kenya. They had farms with coffee and tea and plantations, and they did very little work. They had Africans to do all the work for them, so they lived this life of sport and, as I said, games and frivolity. So Lord Errol was a bit of a womanizer, and he was surviving by hooking up with wealthy women. His estate, he'd squandered the money with gambling and whatever. This is between the wars. I think we're approaching World War II. And so people started gossiping about Lord Errol having an affair with this fella's wife, Diana. And they were slipping notes into the old fella's locker saying, there is no fool like an old fool, and what are you going to do about it? Well, essentially Lord Errol was found shot in the back of the head in his car. The car was still idling the next morning. It had run off a ditch. So someone had been in the car when Lord Errol got into it. He dropped them off at Diana's house. They'd all been out drinking and having fun. He dropped them off, jumped in his car. Now they think someone was behind him, laying down on the seat. They got up, shot him in the head, and the car ran off. So that was White Mischief. And I would love to have gone out to the Mathaiga Club and seen where all this took place, where the Happy Valley set lived. You can still see the remains of some of the houses in the jungle where some of these folks lived. And yeah, those are the things I should have concentrated on, things that interested me. But anyway, I never made it, and I probably never will. Just want to talk a little bit about my state of mind in 1986. I've had time to reflect on it. I seem to be very needy. I seem to, the amount of money I was spending on ringing people at home, particularly my sister. My sister was always having to do things for me to get me out of pickles, to help me. My bag got stolen and I lost my traveller's checks and my work references and do this, do that. And I was always ordering her around like she was a maid or something, you know. I regret that. But what I got out of it was how reliant I was on, emotionally reliant on people to make me feel good, to prop me up, to help me, not to solve my problems, but for me to be there to pour it out. So I'm sure some of you have that friend who rings up and they're in another spot of trouble or bother and they need advice. That's how they portray it. I need advice. You listen to them, you give them the advice, and you give them all the sympathy and support you can, knowing in the back of your head that they're not going to follow any of your advice. All they really want is a sounding board, and that was me. So, you know, the advice I would get I'd totally ignore, and then in another few weeks or a month or something I'd be back ringing or at your door to whinge and complain about, you know, how shit things were. I had no confidence in myself. I was confused in so many avenues. But I'm not that way inclined anymore. I'm not confused. I like myself. I'm confident to a degree. I don't really need too much emotional support, but I do have a few people that I can talk to, but I try not to overdo it. Try to limit the times that I rely on or lean on those people for some emotional support. But these days my life's pretty stable. It's nice and smooth. There's no real peaks and troughs. It's pretty smooth. The dramas are kind of manageable, but that's come from an extra 40 years of being given some extra life. So you got any ideas on that, you can leave them in the comment section, and I'll keep polishing, and in a moment we'll get on to the diary and see what it says. Going to need the glasses for this. Just another thought. I've just been out in the kitchen putting on a curry for tonight's dinner, Easter Thursday, and we've got Brian's kids coming up tomorrow. Well, they're growing up, so we're going to have pizzas. I've got a pizza oven out there, I'm going to fire that up, and I've designed a outdoor drive-in. Got these big poles that I've stuck in some flower pots. I'll put my screen between the poles with my projector and my laptop, and we should sit in the garden tomorrow night. It's going to be a nice and warm night, and enjoy a drive-in movie. Yeah, what I was thinking when I was out there cooking, you know, always going through my mind, is the ability to change your perception of things. I've heard it was Abraham Lincoln said most folks are as happy as they make their minds up to be. And I'm going back to that entry in this book where I was at Aswan, and I've mentioned, you know, in order to continue on my trip I'd need to be happy, adjusted, strong, and I'm none of those, I've declared. Which is kind of, you know, I was 26 in the prime of health in freaking Egypt. Come on. Foreign foods, beautiful weather, surrounded by, you know, antiquities, Egyptian people. I could have easily just enjoyed myself for a few days till that boat came to pick me up, but I couldn't see beyond the fog I was in. I couldn't see a way out of the depression that I was in. It's not easy to do, but sometimes if you can just change your perception 5 degrees, I could have seen, hang on, I'm in a really nice place. There's no need to be sad and depressed. You should be happy. Anyway, that's just an observation. Yeah, right, so we pick it up on the 23rd of March 1986, and I've now been away, what, about 5 months. So it says, a gap in my writing due to basic laziness and the heat. I left Nairobi on the 19th of March on the night train to Mombasa. I got to Mombasa and was spun out by the humidity. However, I found an Indian shop with ice cold yogurt and passion juice. Also cakes. Yeah, that's something. I was introduced to these little, they call them barfi, little Indian cakes that are made with powdered milk. They're delicious. I got a matutu, which must be like a taxi, to the border, sweating all the way, and had to wait a few hours till a bus took me to Tanga in Tanzania. So I must have gone to Tanzania before Zanzibar. I've noticed the women here make exotic tattooed patterns on their feet and hands, a bit like the Indians do. I did it once. Also, they wear a sweet perfume and the black veils of the Muslim women. Quite poetic of me, eh? I set myself up in a lovely old Victorian hotel called the New. It has a lovely balcony, and in the restaurant the old waiter speaks a little Greek. I have changed $40 the first night, then $20 at the bank, and spent it all on some whiskey, coffee. Also, you have to drink heaps in this weather, so I drink juice. I would have said I've never drank whiskey. Maybe I meant a girl. Great strawberry milkshakes. I've also seen a bottle of Mateus I have my eye on. A Mateus, I don't even know what that is. As for Zanzibar, it's a joke. I've tried at the port. I found a dhow that would take me, but then immigration says no. I found the Zanzibar shipping office and they tell me there are no ships to Zanzibar at all. Okay, so maybe you have to go to Zanzibar from Tanzania. Yeah, actually that's right. I think Zanzibar is part of Tanzania. So I then tried Tanzania Air, booked out till the April the 3rd. In desperation I thought I would go down to Dar es Salaam by train, but the trains don't go till Thursday. I don't know what to do now. Yesterday I went to the biggest and best hotel here, Makongo. I swam in their pool. It was very nice, water like a bath. In fact, a bit too warm, still relaxing. I may go back today. No one bothered to charge me. I was in terrible pain on Saturday. I felt my kidneys were collapsing, so I went to a clinic, but it was such a joke. All they gave me was painkillers. I would have gladly gone straight back to Nairobi. Yeah, I was a bit of a hypochondriac. Yeah, kidney pain, I don't know what that was about. I probably wasn't drinking enough fluids. Then in fact I asked a taxi driver how much to the border. It was funny. I tried bribing a bank employee to stamp my currency form. It was amusing, but he didn't take the bait. It's quite pleasant here, and food is cheap, ice cream is good, nice pears and coconuts, hot weather. Even my room has a fan and mosquito net, so I've been sleeping a fair bit. It just seems Zanzibar is a little too difficult to get to. But on the 26th I've said I can finally make it to Zanzibar. The key has been persistence, time and money. I hung around Tanga for 5 days, basically eating, sleeping, some swimming, but mostly relaxing. And spending money. I did walk to the Amboni caves. Yeah, that's the caves I mentioned before, which were mildly exciting. A bloody long walk though. I swam in a river on the way yesterday. I got the bus at 9:30 p.m. overnight to Dar es Salaam. It wasn't such a bad trip compared to others. I've arrived here about 8:30 a.m. Dar es seems a hellhole, but dusty, people sleazy. I went up to the shipping office, no boat till Saturday. I was ready to give up and go back to Tanga, however I thought I'd try Air Tanzania. I did and am booked to fly tomorrow, return only 1,500 shillings, $11. I'm concerned though I may have to exchange $30 a day on the island. I rang Pauline Ross at home just to say hi and talk some business. My leather jacket is missing. That's the one with the tassels that Carol was taking. Excuse writing, I lay on a bed in a dump hotel with fan on full. Still I'm hot and miserable. There's the old mood swings again. Yeah, it would have been challenging. As I said before, I reckon I could do it now, even at my age, but I'd have to have a motorbike. Hitchhiking and long trains and buses, yeah, I couldn't do it. Anyway, it's not going to happen. I'm in a hotel called, this is the 28th, the Victoria, for $6 a night with fan, shower, mosquito net and breakfast. Quite good. I finally got to the island, Zanzibar, and it really is very nice, little alleys, shops, markets and heaps to see. I'll show you guys some photos that I took here. Also very photogenic, Zanzibar. There seems no need to change a set amount per day. I'm short though, and I've been offered 150 to $1. It must be shillings, I suppose. So may change $50. I've just been wandering around the little alleys looking at junk. I swam in the ocean yesterday, but not for long. A lot of shit floating around. Also, I didn't have my towel. I ate a mango and this huge orange for dinner and spent a quiet night listening to the radio. What's new? Today more walking, found the shop to hire bicycles, tourist office, old slave market, old Arab fort, House of Wonders, so that was quite good, snap happy. There's a coffee set I saw I liked, bronze, or so they say, in the Arabic vein. It's a possibility, but I must try to say no. Yeah, that's that one you saw me polishing. They must have told me it was a coffee set. Okay. It's definitely not bronze. There is a disco on Prison Island tonight. I think I'll go. I must get out a little. I get quite depressed staying in all the nights. My day in Dar es turned out better than when I first wrote. I met a guy who took me around swimming and looking at the town. It's not as bad as I first thought, but still a dump. So by the end of March the 30th, my last night in the island, I fly back to Dar es Salaam tomorrow, 7:30 AM. I'm so glad I came to this island. It's been the most enjoyable place I've been, possibly since LA. That's a big call. I just walked down little side streets, stopped to talk to people, and always the people are so friendly, always adding welcome to every sentence. The children are much better than the Zaire or Ugandan versions, very polite but friendly. I wandered over to the big hotel last night, Mbawani, to go to their disco. I met a buddy there and we went to the Fisherman's Village. I'd been there the night before too, Fisherman's Village. Anyway, they turned me away because I had a singlet on. Still do. Can't say I was worried, it was couples anyway. Before this I was stoned in the Fisherman's Village. These guys cracked me up, unlike the other bovines. That must be the catchphrase of the time. I've met these people aren't always asking for something, they actually give. I hired out a bicycle and went up to these slave caves. Can't say it was really worthwhile, but an experience. A bloody wrong ride anyhow. Otherwise I've been swimming, meeting two old Muslims, Ali and Rashid, each day for talks on Australia, Zanzibar and Islam. Today I bought my coffee set and some elephants as memoirs of this little piece in heaven. I didn't know where those elephants came from. I've got them as well. We'll have a look at them when I show you some other stuff. Anyway, by the 3rd of April, hell, where did those days go? I've heaps to tell and 2-page job here. First I flew out of Zanzibar feeling a bit sad. I really loved that place. The last night there I met a guy at the Mbawani hotel and we went to the Fisherman again and got really cut, is it? Really out of it, but very mellow mood. I was refused to the disco, not the first time, but didn't bother too much walking back through these little streets with all the people out and little shops open at strange hours. The locals just sitting around enjoying the night, the air and the company. So yeah, it's probably, Fisherman's Village seems to be the place to go to smoke joints, guys. I flew to Dar es Salaam and was fortunate to find a bus leaving within a few hours to Tanga. The bus trip was very long, boring and uncomfortable, but I've certainly had worse. I arrived in Tanga about 1 AM to find Jumba waiting up for me at the new hotel. I sat till about 2 AM enjoying the stillness and peace of the Tanzanian night. I had planned to leave the next day to Mombasa, but was told then there was no bus that day, so I booked to Arusha that night. The day I ran around, posted my coffee set and bought some goodies. Yeah, I bought these tins of coffee as well, with beautiful image of Kilimanjaro on them, a giraffe standing in front of Kilimanjaro, tins of local coffee. I gave one to a friend called Christina, and I think I kept a tin for a long time. Maybe I gave my sister one. They were beautiful tins. I mentioned them to Christina only recently. She thinks she's still got it in storage somewhere. I dropped in to see Mushtaq at 6 p.m. and we went to the Hindu shop to eat some lovely Indian food and sweetmeats. Yeah, that guy introduced me to these little things called barfi. I nearly missed the bus but made it by 5 minutes. The night trip was uneventful. I couldn't sleep in the seat, so I lay down in the aisle but had to keep getting up to let people out. Arrived in Arusha about 8 a.m. and missed the Nairobi bus because I was 100 shillings short. Instead I took a matutu to the border, like a taxi I guess. A real painful trip full of people. I couldn't move, all my bum was so painful for sitting in one spot. At the border I was hassled by these Maasai for their jewellery. I took a taxi from the border to Nairobi, not so crowded, also saw giraffe, wildebeest and kudu, quite spectacular. Back to Nairobi rooftop, my first task was to head to Wimpy and the post office. No mail, but I had a burger. I thought I would go down to the airways, and lucky I did. I was misinformed. I was supposed to leave 2 days after arriving, but the girl gave me the wrong something, luckily. Anyhow, after going to see the manager of KA, Kenyan Airlines I guess, I was put on the next flight, which is 2 p.m. today. I went down to ring Millie and Pauline Reynolds. I felt a little down, but walking back, an American asked for directions to the Hilton. He was quite frightened being out alone in Nairobi. I took him and he asked me for dinner. Yeah, I remember that guy, he just approached me. He was terrified being at night in Nairobi and not knowing where he was. He was lost, so I showed him where things were and he took me to dinner at his hotel. I think I went up to his room and cleaned out his minibar. So I ate at the Nairobi Hilton, quite nice too. Later we watched in-house movies and I cleared the beer out of his fridge. How did I know that? I also enjoyed a hot shower and he was a nice guy, a lecturer in love. Yesterday, my last full day in Nairobi, was quite hectic. I bought some masks and presents and sent them back with the rest of the coffee. I was at the market looking for masks and saw this really pretty Indian girl. Of course I smiled and she came over. Turns out she was a very forward young 15-year-old. She was mega cute. If only didn't meet these women a day before leaving. I remember I had this sort of rock and roll top on. It was like the rising sun. And yeah, this young lady was quite forward. I can't remember what she said, but yeah, she certainly wanted to meet me. But I think she was there with her brother or something. But yeah, I ran out of time. Anyways, I was determined to have a little fling before leaving, and I've already asked Whiskey at the photo shop out, so I sat down at Sam's something bar waiting for her to finish work. I got talking to a Ugandan doctor, had an amusing chat. Then, while Whiskey was going home to get changed, I stayed on talking and actually I was bought a beer to the guys from the market. Whiskey arrived back and we went to Trattoria, an Italian restaurant. It was good food and I had some red wine, so I was happy, of course. I walked Whiskey to the bus stop, then strolled to the disco for 10 minutes, then came home. Life in Nairobi was good. Alright, we're going to end it there. Nothing happened with Whiskey. I could have taken her up to the top of the hotel in my little cardboard humpy, I suppose. Or I could have even gone back to her place. I think she lived a long way out of town on a bus. As I said, she used to ring from time to time. She sent photos of her little boy when she had a son some years later. But yeah, it's all just a memory now. So look, that's episode 4 from Nairobi. I fly down to Harare. I've got a bit of a challenge there because I arrive on a one-way ticket. and they didn't like that at all, so I had to talk my way out of it. But then I make my way over to see Dad, so we'll make that the next chapter, and we'll wind this story up then of my time in Africa in 1986. Alright, I hope you've enjoyed this one. Talk soon.